Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist turned mindset and high-performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. My guest today is Skye Waterson, the founder of Unconventional Organisation, an international support service for professionals with ADHD. Diagnosed during her PhD after repeated burnout, she has built a business that helps entrepreneurs and executives with ADHD or suspected ADHD build sustainable systems, scale their companies, and actually enjoy the process. Her approach is science-backed, realistic, and built around how ADHD brains actually work. That sounds super interesting, and I can't wait to hear more. So welcome, Skye, and thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show today.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to this. So, Skye, let's dive right in. How do ADHD brains work? What makes them different?
The biggest difference is if you have an ADHD brain or you struggle with ADHD symptoms is how you process dopamine is likely to be different. So the reward signals in the brain. It's actually really, really common in entrepreneurs. So a lot of people with entrepreneurial skills will also resonate with these struggles. You could also struggle with time blindness, how we process time, working memory, how we remember things people tell us in the moment, or if we remember them, and transition times as well, how we transition from one task to another.
Yeah, I mean, you discovered you had ADHD during your PhD, which I would assume is already one of the most demanding environments possible. So first off, because I'm curious, what was your PhD about?
My PhD was looking at parents' experiences of economic security. So yeah, it was very different.
Interesting. Can you share how you got diagnosed and what the diagnosis felt like at the time?
Yeah, so I got diagnosed because I basically finished my master's and I was so exhausted at that point. I'd been working 3 jobs, finishing my master's, sleep. I did everything wrong in that context. You know, I was like, I'm just going to push through. I'm just going to keep trying. And I just need to work harder. And so I'd taken that energy all the way through to my master's. And by the time I finished, I was told, hey, you have a PhD scholarship. And I didn't even remember that. I literally quit university, went to work at a bakery as a cashier, took art classes, and I was like, I'm never going back. And it was only when I decided to go back and do the PhD that I said, okay, if I'm going to do it this time, I need to figure out what is going on with me, because I think there's something going on. And luckily, you know, they have a really great program, you know, for people to go and ask those questions. So I went to the learning center at my university and I just said, is there something wrong with me? I had no idea, which is funny because looking back, you know, I taught, you know, developmental psychology. I learned about, you know, all the different diagnoses, but very much in children was the focus at the time. ADHD wasn't as popular of a concept with adults as it is now. And so when they came back and said, we're pretty confident you have ADHD, for me, that was a big shock and that threw me into a whole new avenue of research.
It's so interesting. I mean, can you share what criteria you have to kind of fulfill to get that diagnosis and what living with it feels like to you?
Yeah, so so to get the diagnosis, you can't just get it from the university. You have to then go get tested. But it's there's 2 types. So ADHD can be primarily inattentive, primarily hyperactive, or combined, which is what I am. And it's generally around questions like, for the hyperactive, do you feel like you're driven by a motor? For the distracted, you know, are you somebody who is often like looking out the window, missing what people are saying? Do you struggle with interrupting is another question that, comes up. And so when you're doing the test, they take you through these questions that they have in the DSM, as well as a variety of other things, your report cards. Different countries do it slightly differently, to get a sense of whether you struggled with these ADHD symptoms across time and across different areas of your life.
I mean, I find it really interesting because it is a little bit controversial as well, because some people say it's just normal human behavior and we are just not made for the kind of work environment that we experience right now, or the kind of school system. So it's totally normal to, maybe get distracted, or to be very, what we call hyperactive these days, but just maybe just the normal drive to be active. So how do you think about that?
It's a good question. So I would say, one, yes, I don't think it's very normal to sit behind a classroom, but then I have ADHD. Maybe it is. So it's very common. It's more common when you look at the research for people who have entrepreneurial tendencies to have ADHD symptoms. Right. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're hanging out with a group of entrepreneurs and you're saying, this must just be normal. Or if you're in a family, because it's also very genetic, and you're hanging out with your family members and they say, you are fine, you're just like me and Uncle so-and-so, like we're exactly the same. That's just because you guys are in an enclave of people who struggle with ADHD symptoms. There are people who don't, and I've met them, and they are very confused about what I'm talking about, and they can totally sit there for 8 hours, and it's very normal for them, and they will fill out bureaucratic forms without any trouble. So this is, yeah.
That's normal to me. Sorry.
So sometimes it does make, this is maybe, I get asked this question so many times, I'm always looking for another way to answer. Yes, I think there's more understanding of it. I think that we're having more of a conversation about ADHD symptoms. So one of the things that we do in our program is you don't have to be diagnosed with ADHD to work with us, because we don't give out medication, we don't do any of that stuff. For us, it's about giving you the executive functioning strategies that you need. And if you struggle with this more than most, because there is a conversation, you could be subclinical, you might not have ADHD, but you might just struggle with these symptoms more than most. These are still executive functioning strategies that potentially could help you, essentially. But in terms of the conversation of, is it overdiagnosed, I tend to find there's like creative entrepreneurial enclaves of people who go, it's very much overrepresented. And then there's bureaucratic government institutions who are like, no one is ever talking about this.
Funny. I mean, when you think about it, the diagnosis must have been both kind of liberating, so you knew what was going on, and also overwhelming at the same time. And it really makes me wonder, maybe it could even be an advantage. As you said, a lot of entrepreneurs are struggling with those symptoms, but they are also successful in terms of what we usually call success. So maybe it's an advantage when we know how to work with it, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I always describe ADHD as being strong strengths, strong weaknesses, tendency to have a spiky profile. So there are certain things, and especially this relates to if you are an entrepreneur and you're doing sort of independent work, your struggles could also be benefits. Your ability to hyperfocus could help you to launch that product within a weekend. Your ability to hyperfocus could also help you decide to do something that's completely irrelevant for a weekend and not work on the thing that you need to do. Your ability to go fast and be a bit more impulsive can help you stand out in the market where you need to make those moves and not just get stuck behind indecision. But it can also mean that you might make a decision that is more likely to be wrong. So it has strengths and weaknesses, essentially.
Yeah, it's really about how we utilize those strengths. And I think if we do it not really correctly, but if we do it in a productive way, then this could really be something like an evolutionary advantage for us entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So what is one insight from science that maybe completely contradicts mainstream productivity advice for people with ADHD? So how can entrepreneurs use that to their advantage?
Insight from science. I think the biggest one for me, and I teach on this, I'm actually going to teach on this right after this, is the way that our brain works with dopamine appears to be different. So there is still, neuroscientists are still arguing about all of these things, but essentially what I mean here is that when you have ADHD symptoms, it appears that getting a reward at the end of a task is less motivating for you than it is for other people. Our brain doesn't seem to, if you look at how the brain works, there's a lot of very well established theories that you are not getting that dopamine boost at the beginning of the task that says, hey, great job, you're sitting down to do this thing. And then at the end, you're going to give yourself a reward and you're also going to feel great for having done it. So woohoo, isn't that awesome? Your brain just kind of goes, this is lame and I don't know why we're doing it. So the biggest thing I teach people is how to add dopamine boosters. So, we think about your 5 senses and ways to make things more interesting at the beginning, how to add dopamine boosters to the beginning of your task that you're not you don't want to do, in order to then be able to do it more effectively. And I've worked with so many clients at this point. We've done this for multiple years who've been able to go from I don't want to do this to doing it in about 15 minutes without all of that procrastination and resistance that you'll usually experience.
Nice. Can you share some of those dopamine boosters? They sound interesting.
Yeah. So there's different ways of doing it, and it is somewhat a little bit personal because it will depend on you. But at its essence, if you think about the 5 senses, we've got touch, taste, sight, sound, smell. You're probably already doing this without even realizing. And again, your brain is just going to naturally try and go in these directions, and sometimes we don't even realize. So you will probably grab a coffee. You'll be like, oh, I have to sit down with coffee to get started. Yeah. That's your brain that's you giving yourself a dopamine boost, right? A very specific one. But, there's also, if you were sitting down to do a couple of hours or something deep work related, we could sit down with coffee, but we could also say, well, let me take a minute to read an article, or let me listen to some music, or let me sit in a space that I really like to sit in, hammocks or coffee shops or something. And those things are all going to be boosting the beginning of the task, because you're going to be like, well, I have to do this task, but first I get to sit down, I get to read an article, have a coffee, I get to listen to some music, and then it's pretty good. And so once you sit down with the intention of focusing and you're not on your phone, like scrolling, trying to get the motivation to start, then we can go in and we can talk about the next struggles. So the biggest struggles we have starting a task, it's too boring, it's too confusing, it's emotionally vulnerable. And we break down each of those as we go.
Yeah, waiting for the motivation to start, that never happens, right?
A lot of people, one of the things I'll often say to people is, oh yeah, I can help you find like 5 hours a week of time. And they're always confused by why. This is one of the reasons why.
Exactly. Just get it done. Just get started. Now, you have built a successful multi-six-figure business despite your ADHD diagnosis. So when everything feels urgent and on fire, how do you personally decide what's signal versus noise in your business?
Yeah, this is great. This is another system we've been teaching for a while. I do all of the things that I teach, by the way. They all started because I needed them. And actually, for this one, you guys can message me at Unconventional Organization, and I will give you the full playbook. You can just message me success. That way I know you came from this podcast, and I'll give it to you for free. So essentially what we need to do is we need to go in and we need to say, okay, it feels like everything is on fire. And I could tell you, I've worked with many, many entrepreneurs, and what we find is that there are really only 5 or less things that are truly urgent in a day. Truly, truly urgent. And I'll show you how to get to them. The first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and grab either a journal or a document, something you're going to come back to. Back of the napkin lists is not something that I recommend because we want to use it and come back to it. but I want you to write down everything that you need to do, both for work and for home. Categories are arbitrary and they don't really work with ADHD. So write a list of everything that is in your head, every task that you need to do. It's a great way to get things out of your brain, have more brain space to think creatively, that kind of thing. Once you've done that, you want to look at that list and you want to say, okay, what is truly something I have to do today, or there will be a negative external consequence tomorrow? That makes it urgent. And if you struggle with that, and a lot of people do, then I use the waiting list metaphor, which is to say, if your day went sideways and you found yourself in a waiting room, and you were, okay, this is my day. I'm in a waiting room for myself, for somebody else, whatever it is. What is the thing you would still do on your phone, or the thing you would at least message somebody and say, hey, I'm not going to be able to do that thing tomorrow because I'm not going to be prepared? That is truly urgent.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean,
that's all good.
I started my day with a huge list today, so love those lists just to get everything out of my head, because otherwise it drives me nuts.
Yeah, and the key is we need to prioritize that list. So once you've done that, then okay, there's 3 things, usually it's 3. Like I said, it's almost always under 5. If you got more than 5, you might be doing it wrong. You might be thinking of someone else's urgent as your urgent, and that's a conversation we have a lot. Once you've got that, you truly know what you have to do. It creates a lot more space in your day to go, okay, what is the other thing that I want to do? What is the important thing? Because it's my 80-20. And we go into depth in this. We have truly urgent tasks for the week. The first thing you do when you join my program is we help you figure out what your 80-20 is. What's the task that if you focused on it, it's a 20% task that will give you the 80% return in your business growth? That's usually what we're trying to find space for you to work on, essentially.
Sounds great. Now, can you share an example where you solved one of those business bottlenecks, not by working harder, but by making friction disappear?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Gosh, let me think of one. So in terms of friction, I think the biggest thing is there's multiple kinds of friction that you're really going to experience with ADHD. One of them is, I'll give you an example of a client of mine who is an athlete, the wonderful Chelsea. She wanted to race in Europe. That was her goal. And so she used my systems to figure out, okay, what do I need to do in order to race in Europe? And for her, it was simple. She needed to contact sponsors. That was the thing that she needed to do. And often, the thing we really need to do in our business is quite mundane. It's usually not scary. Reaching out to people is scary, but it's usually more just we have to send a bunch of emails. And so the thing that removes the friction there is, okay, well, first of all, can I reduce the procrastination around this? Can I remove all of the excess tasks? You might think I need to do Facebook ads, I need to do this, I need to do that. And maybe eventually, but right now, this is the thing that you need to focus on right now. We do a 30-day challenge when people start to kind of help them understand this concept of what do you need to focus on right now. And then when we're talking about removing friction in terms of doing the task, it's usually about, can we build a system around it? Can we build a CRM, a daily routine, check-ins to say, okay, once a week, let me look at the data and see if I'm getting the response I want, and obviously communicate with the team. We're always very helpful about ADHD or business questions about, maybe adjust your messaging like this or that kind of thing. And in her case, it worked. She actually was able to, go to Europe and race, and that was really, really cool. So a lot of it has to do with just refining and focusing everything down to what truly matters, and then being able to work on what truly matters. One of the reasons I call myself an ADHD business implementation coach is it's not just about the what. It's not about here's another list, here's another thing. We've all got that. It's about how. How are we going to do it?
I love that. I love systems and I love simplifying. That's what I teach as well. So I know
Yeah.
that most entrepreneurs think that growth equals more, like more clients, more offers, more content. But I think to really unlock growth, you often have to subtract instead of add to it, right? Especially
Hmm.
for people with ADHD. How do you think about that?
Definitely. I think a lot of times people need to grow by focusing and growing that piece of their business. I've seen a lot of people, people will come to me because in order to, work with me, you often have to like do a little interview. We have to see if you're a good fit. Sometimes people will have like 10 different business ideas that we'll discuss in the conversation. And it's very clear that any of these could work, but it's more about picking one and really focusing in. But that comes with a lot of, emotional anxiety. I think a lot of times we want to hold on to all of our multiple ways of doing things. It feels a lot safer. And so it can be a bit of a mindset shift to say, picking something based on what we've discussed, and we actually have a whole decision-making framework that we use because it can be difficult. And then focusing in on what that is going to look like and simplifying it and working on it is the fastest path to success for you, even though it feels like sometimes it's the opposite of that.
Yeah, definitely. If you could implant just one ADHD friendly system in every entrepreneur's brain, just like downloading an app, what would it be and why?
Well, I definitely think it would be the prioritization filter. So that's the how to go from there's a million things to do to there's just a couple of things to do. And then start with a reward. If you're giving yourself a reward at the end, you're doing it wrong for your brain. It's you could still give yourself a reward at the end, but most of the time the reward is that the thing is
Okay. Yeah, well, I get that. Now, those strategies are gold for sure. But behind the systems, there's still the very human side, the emotions, relationships, and even the guilt that so many founders carry with them. Because many entrepreneurs live with that constant guilt of,
over.
or they fear that they are not doing enough, they are not
Mm-hmm.
disciplined enough, or they're
Mm-hmm.
not normal enough, whatever that may mean. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you reframe that guilt into fuel instead?
Yeah, this is a big one. It's actually one of the reasons I like running a community because for me, the thing that helps reframe that is that people are part of a community of other people who think like them. I often say to people, I can tell you that this is normal. I can tell you that this is part of the path as much as I want. And people are always going to be like, oh, Skye's just got something else and she's
Mm.
probably getting some strategies. I don't know what it is. And it's really for me, it's when I'm doing, I'm actually teaching a coaching program right after this, and people will talk to each other. They'll share wins with each other, they'll share struggles with each other. And hearing somebody who's also an entrepreneur, who's also focusing in who you admire, who's been winning in this area, say that they're struggling to focus, say that they're struggling to stay connected to their goals. And that just really helps people understand that they're not alone. I see a lot of positive emotional growth using that kind of framework.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's all about connection. And that's
Hmm.
part of my podcast's mission as well. So I totally
Hmm.
agree with that. Now,
Hmm.
I also noticed that a lot of entrepreneurs just secretly or not so secretly worry that if they remove that constant chaos from their lives, they will lose their creative edge. So, what is the truth about the relationship between ADHD, creativity, and structure?
Hmm. Well, you're not wrong because you are currently working on dopamine systems that aren't necessarily going to work for you long term. So usually when people say that, what they mean is when I'm up against a deadline, I know I have to get it done by tomorrow, I have to pull something out of the hat. That pressure is going to help give you a dopamine boost that will allow you to focus. For a lot of people, that is the way that they go through life, is they kind of use those last minute dopamine boosts to focus.
Hmm.
And the chaos in some ways can help with the dopamine boost. But it's not really great for your health. A lot of my clients will come to me in their late, late 30s, late 40s, they will be saying, okay, I have a family now, I have kids, I can't keep doing it like this. So it's not great for your health. Take it from me. I tried that, burned out very, very hard. And also it's not the only way. It just feels like the only way. And so that's why we teach the systems around dopamine regulation, where to get boosts, how to get boosts, all of those kinds of things. Because once you're able to do that, you realize you don't need the chaos to thrive anymore. You can do it without it. And your family, your health, everyone will thank you.
Totally. I'm curious, has understanding your ADHD changed the way you show up in your closest relationships? Because you now understand what drives people and the dopamine and how it connects.
Mm-hmm. I think it's changed everything. I mean, understanding how my brain works changes everything. One of the things I understand, like just simple things that come to mind, is I love going for a walk. I'm a big okay, let's go for a walk. We need to talk this out kind of person, and understanding, oh, that's actually me needing some dopamine stimulation to have this conversation, because it's a little bit too low stimulation for me to sit and talk and have a long conversation where we're just sitting down, has allowed me to be more sort of open about that idea, and also understand when I get frustrated, it's just because I need to go out and have this conversation in a more active way. There's a lot of evidence behind exercise and supporting your working memory and things like that. So that's just one of a myriad of examples.
Interesting. We should have done a walk and talk. Now, you want to help thousands of entrepreneurs build sustainable systems. What does success look like to you personally?
Success to me personally looks like being able to take care of having the resources to take care of yourself and take care of your family, however that means to you. Different people have different goals. Different goals need different resources. We talk about that when you actually start the program. But when I was an academic, which is what I did before this, it was a very prestigious job, but it did not pay well. It was very contract to contract, insecure, system. And that, for me, it felt very much like I was falling behind my peers, especially when I burned out and I just didn't have a job to go to, had no work experience in that kind of outside of academia. And so, it was a very stressful time financially, going through academic, space, and being able to run my own business actually gave me a lot of stability, because I was able to be my brain self, with the ups and downs of energy and the dopamine focusing and all of those kinds of things, and the creative side as well, hyper focus. And I was able to still be able to have a financial baseline for myself and for my family that really gave me a lot of security. So for a lot of entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship, if you struggle with ADHD symptoms, entrepreneurship done right can provide a lot of stability and security in a world that didn't when it comes to traditional workplaces as much. So that's something I'm really, really passionate about sharing with other people.
Yeah, that's a pro for sure. I mean, academia is a tough space to be in. Especially financially. I mean, it's really rewarding from just research perspective. And if you're driven by curiosity, it's a great place to be. But financially, not
There's
so.
a reason I was working 3 jobs. They're contract to contract. You got to keep them all running. People often ask me, when did you start doing entrepreneurship? And I'm like, about the same time I had to fund the PhD. Let's be honest.
Exactly. Now, for someone listening right now who feels overwhelmed and maybe on the edge of burnout, what's just one small step that you suggest that they can take today to start creating more freedom in their life and business?
Yeah. The first thing I'd say is just DM me for the Focus Formula, because it will help you in the first 5 minutes. Everything I do is designed to take time away, not waste your time, give strategies that work immediately. But also think about the idea that you might already be working about as hard as you can. One of the biggest myths I think that we can experience with ADHD, and I've definitely been very guilty of this, is I just need to work harder. I just need to push through. I just need to do more. And we can really burn ourselves out or crash out doing that. And so the biggest thing I'd say to you is you are already probably working very, very hard. You're just not necessarily doing it in a way that's built for you. So it feels like you've got a lot of excess steam. You're sort of running on empty a lot. And that is true. That is not, you're not making that up. So systems that work better for your brain are going to be so much more effective than just trying harder.
Yeah, totally agree. So last but not least, where can our listeners find you online if they would like to learn more about you or connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me at Unconventional Organisation. You can find me at my website. You can find me on Instagram, where you can DM me for the free download. And if you want to listen to a podcast, you can find me at the ADHD Skills Lab. We just hit our 100th episode. So come along. We talk about research. We talk about business strategies, everything that you need for ADHD.
Fantastic. Skye, thank you so much for sharing your tips and insights with us today. This was fun.
Awesome.
So keep up the great work. Take care and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show or share it with a friend. That way you can support the show and help me reach and support other entrepreneurs like yourself as well. If you would like my help to figure out how you can go from overwhelmed and overworked hustler to empowered and confident leader, check out my website at www.wiredforsuccess.solutions and book a free 20-minute strategy session with me. Can't wait to help you get wired for success. Until next time, take care. Bye.